Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also become a supporter of the show by visiting thebittertruth.info, and you can get some fabulous swag there to make your life better. And you can do the Patreon thing, and you can always listen for free on Spotify, iTunes, Podcast Addict, YouTube, all of the usual suspects. And hopefully this stuff helps you out. And since we don't really take any support other than the generous donors like yourselves, then that's what happens. So there we go. But today my guest is a friend of the show, been on before, John Schoonover, and he's been on to talk about nuclear power and that kind of thing. And the last time he came in to visit, but today we're going to talk about something else, man. How you been?
Been good. Sure like to get my vaccine. It's not very easy in my part of the world.
What's the challenge with that?
There's not enough juice to go around and not enough people jabbing arms.
Okay. I'm going to wait on that for a minute, man. I'm going to hang out for just a hot. I want some people to fall on the sword first and see what happens. My brothers are both doctors. My brothers are both doctors. My one sister-in-law is a doctor, and they got it. And I hate to sound sinister. I just think they got the gooder version. I think they got the betterer version.
You think so?
Yeah, I think the one I'm going to get is the one that's going to kill me right away, like AZT drugs did in the 80s. So I'm just going to hang out for a hot second. This one friend of mine said, "Well, hey man, they made Viagra. And if they could raise the dead there," I'm kind of going, yeah, but they took longer to make Viagra than they took to make this crap. You know, it's like, and last I checked with Viagra, there were no exploding penises, just some that had an erection that didn't go down after 4 hours.
Want to leave, yeah.
You know, so, and who knew we were going to start talking about that crap right away, right, John? I mean,
yeah, right. That's just what I came on the show for.
The intellectual class of this show. Who'd have thought we would dive so low as to Viagra, but hey man, we emailed back and forth a little bit, and I read your article on obviously the necessity for more, in my opinion, more than a third party. But why don't you kind of jump into some of your thoughts?
Yeah, well, that article is from September, and of course things have changed a bit since September. But my contention is that the Republican Party has effectively split. There's the what I call the Trump rump, which is still the Republican Party,
right?
And then there are those Republican establishment people and middle of the road Republican voters who defected to Biden during this last election,
right?
And I contend that the Trump rump, the people who stayed with Biden, with Trump through the election, consider them traitors.
Sure.
And don't want to have them in the same party with them. And I think it looks as if the defectors have pretty much the same feelings about the party faithful, the Trump rump. Mm-hmm. One thing, there's this Lincoln Project, which are a group of fairly well-heeled middle-class establishment or middle-of-the-road establishment type Republicans who really put a lot of effort into getting Biden elected. Just this last week, they published a list of corporations that have, since January 6th in the ruckus at the Capitol building, publicly stopped funding Republican representatives and senators who were against accepting the Electoral College outcome.
Right.
So this leaves the Trump rump with no money. I mean, if they don't have corporate backers, who have they got?
Right.
And it leaves me thinking that the Lincoln Project people might do something like trying to primary the Trump rump people in Congress using the backing of all these corporations that have dropped the Trump rumpers.
Sure.
And their own resources to defeat them. The question then is, will the congressional districts who elected Trump rumpers vote for traitors?
Right. Well, I mean, what you're saying, I think I was saying this 18, 19, when all this, the primaries were going down, whoever lost in 20 was going to implode, was kind of my opinion.
Yeah. In fact, at first, I had thought it would be the Democrats.
Well, if the Democrats lost, they would have imploded for sure, because then they would have, it would have been like, you cheated Bernie again. You rammed Biden down our throat. He was a shitty candidate with a crap record. But they, quote, won, and barely took the Congress. So now the GOP is imploding because, for these reasons that you just named. But I just don't see either one of them lasting. I think the Democrats are going to get swept in 22. I think it's going to be kind of a free fall. Very likely. You know what I mean?
Very likely, unless Biden becomes Bernie, they'll just do what Democrats do,
right?
And say, "Oh, we're paralyzed because we didn't have a supermajority in the Senate," or some crap like that, to cover up the fact that their backers don't want to provide what working class Americans need.
Absolutely.
They don't want to provide health care. They don't want to provide job stability. They don't want to provide decent incomes, decent housing, any of these things that basic working class Americans want. And okay, that what we've got essentially is two parties, maybe one of them dying, that represent capitalists, and no parties that represent the working class.
We'll see, and
that's our situation.
Well, and also, I mean, and I don't want anybody listening to this to take this wrong, because people always, it's just like when you do comedy, you tell a joke and it gets into the head of some stupid idiot, and they Twitter, "Oh my God, he said this." But the left in this country is functionally is dead. I mean, they have no balls. There's no balls. I mean, if I can use an example, like you remember the Tea Party 10, 11 years ago, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they were so annoying, they got John Boehner to quit. I mean, John Boehner was crying all the time, and half the time I think it was because, the Tea Party was on his ass. And when he resigned, Paul Ryan didn't even want the job, because he's like, yeah, well, fuck these guys. Right. But they got their way. They got their way a lot.
They got their way, and they got the Trump rump.
Yeah, they sure did. And
into Congress.
That's right. They sure did. And these were
they've shown just what they are, and half their party says, we're not interested in you guys.
Yeah. And whereas the left can't even do that, the left can't even force a vote on Medicare for all without coming up with all these, bullshit rules and fake manners, and
Well, let's take a look at why they were able to do that. First thing to think about is that third parties, which would have to be where the left came from, can't get into a situation to be taken seriously.
Mm.
They can barely get on the ballot. I mean, the Democrats and Republicans have done a pretty thorough job of monopolizing the ballot, so that any third party has to fight tooth and nail and pay heavily to get a ballot slot.
That's right.
It's amazing that the Green Party has gotten as many states as they have, because they really went at it tooth and nail.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, which has slipped my mind, is it's back, is to remember where the Tea Party comes from. It's one of these two parties that has the monopoly on ballot slots, on electoral position. It comes out of the Nixon administration's Southern strategy,
Okay.
right? Correct, rather?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's where it comes from. And this Southern strategy has been going on since what, the 70s?
Well, he ran the Southern strategy in '68 too.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, he barely beat Humphrey there, but I mean, in '72 when he ran, it was a wholesale slaughter of McGovern. But he ran the Southern strategy both times, I think.
Yeah, but effectively, what that has become is become kind of a monster in the Republican Party that has taken over a good chunk of the Republican Party, and that basically represents nothing
Right.
except people's fears and anger,
Right.
right? But uh, this is what the Republican Party did to itself,
Right.
right? Now then they say, well, the left can't even do X. Well, the left was not created by one of the major parties. Neither of the major parties is going to create a left faction.
No, that's right. That's right. FDR didn't. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the way the Republican Party created a right-wing faction
Right.
within itself. But nobody's going to do that for the left.
Well, and people forget that FDR and the Democratic Party weren't pro Social Security, and it was two socialist parties, a Communist Party and Labor, that got FDR pushed and said,
right.
if you don't do this, we will not reelect you. Right. Yeah. And that's and people forget that and they act like, no, the Democratic Party is so great and virtuous and awesome. No, it's not. It's malarkey. It's malarkey.
Yeah, that's Democratic Party propaganda.
Right.
What you have to remember is, when did this start happening? 1932?
Mm-hmm.
The Bolshevik Revolution was only 15 years old.
And that's what FDR used as the carrot and the stick to scare the shit out of the capitalists.
Wrapping his pants.
Yep.
That America was going to be next.
That's right. That's right. And 15 years.
He said, and he convinced enough capitalists of this, that we've got to throw some crumbs out there or we're dead meat.
And let's not forget the kinds of strikes we were having back then.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Pinkertons were shooting people. I mean,
people were shooting back too.
Yeah, and they were shooting back. Now, don't forget, but I mean, if you shoot, people are going to shoot back. Yeah. And Ford had his goons with bats and guns and everything else, and so labor showed up with the same armament to play. And
labor was, people were occupying their factories.
That's right. That's right.
We're ready to take over and run this ourselves. You just go home and hug your wife or whatever, capitalist. We can run this show.
Right. And that was not
scary. That is scary.
It is scary, but it was also not a Democratic Party strategy. It was not supported by the Democratic Party. It was the Democratic Party has always been a money party.
Absolutely.
Thomas Jefferson, when he ran, when it was still called the Democratic Republicans, it was a pro-slavery, pro-capitalist party.
Absolutely. That's the basis of it.
Yeah.
It represented slave capital.
Right.
Okay. The plantations were in the South. The financiers for the slave economy were in New York City.
Right.
On Wall Street, just where they are now. And so, it was slave capital. Come the Industrial Revolution, these incipient industrialists in the North, which had lousy farmland. Hey, if we're going to make any money, the South was the rich part of the country.
That's right.
Right? And so these industrialists says, wait a moment. We can't run factories with slaves. We need free labor, free in the sense of buy their labor and then kick them out when we don't need them.
Right.
We can't run industry with slaves where we've got them on our hands all the time. They break equipment out of sabotage. We can't have them putting a monkey wrench into the gears in a textile factory.
That's right.
We need free labor, and that's what the fight between the states and over which new states becoming slave states at the behest of slave capital or free states at the behest of industrial capital.
Well, let me ask you. Okay, so I mean, I already know the answer to this, but you're the smarty pants guy, so I want you to give us the answer to this. Okay, so 2016, Bernie looks like he's got a shot, right? And you know, what little I knew of him, I didn't trust, and so I thought, okay, well, he's saying the right things. He's saying things that could probably get him shot, so I'll give him a shot.
Yeah.
And then he pulled his big boner at the DNC convention, where I expected his Al Pacino moment. You know, I expected him to take Jill Stein up on her offer, because at that time the Green Party was on 49 states, right? And I thought he was show up and take my delegates and screw you guys and go home. You know, but he didn't. No. And then what pissed me off this time around was people believing him again and giving him money again and showing up to these rallies again. And then I remember 18 and 19 getting into these conversations with my friends out here in town just to go get lunch. And, oh, it sounds like you're not over it. It sounds like you're still angry about Bernie and six. Yeah. It's like you catch your wife in bed with a guy. You're not, what, are you supposed to just be cool with it? And like that's what it was like. And then he does it again. And he was even more egregious this time because Obama comes off the bench, gets everybody to give him their delegates. Biden.
Oh my God, he's won 3 states and we are only getting started.
Yeah, and it's like you're going, what the fuck? And so it just continually, and then so Bernie capitulates again, spends campaign money that was given to him by not rich people, and flies around on his plane, spending another couple of $100,000 like he did for Hillary Clinton, you know, making all these campaign stops while Biden is in the basement drooling into a rubber diaper because he needs napping and Adderall on a regular basis because he's a demented old blue death rattle. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And so when people, now that we've got here, because all I heard last year was, well, got to get Trump out of there and your third party bullshit, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now that we're here, moving forward, Nick Brand has got the People's Party, right, going on. What other viable options do you see that we can actually push people, the so-called disgusted Democrats? They're not that disgusted, I don't think. What can we do further?
Well, I don't see anything else viable except under certain conditions, the People's Party. I say under certain conditions. We on the left are not in a position to expect to win elections in the near future. And if the People's Party is merely an electoral party, it'll be down there with the Green Party at 1% to 2% of the vote. Because, as I was saying, we're shut out by the two capitalist parties. We're shut out of elections. I don't know, you old enough to remember there used to be a thing where if a radio or television interviewed a candidate for office, they owed every other candidate for that office.
Yes, I am.
Equal time.
Yep. I got out of high school in 81. I remember a lot of this shit.
Yeah. It's I can't, the name of it was called something like,
it was like the Fair Practices Act or something like that.
Yes, it was something like that. Well, that's been gone since Reagan.
Yeah, he got rid of that.
So a left candidate can't even get free publicity when somebody by getting interviewed on the news. Right. And it doesn't happen. No, shut out of debates. No major women's. What is it?
Well, it was the League of Women Voters who were running the debates back then. That's why John Anderson got into the debate with Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. I mean, and people forget that. And when it became, they were like a bunch of nice PTA moms, and the last thing that they pulled was letting Ross Perot into the debates. And the Democrats and the Republicans were like,
that's the end of that.
That was the end of that.
And the Republicans took it over.
They took it over and they called it the Council on Presidential Debates, which is a private, nonprofit, corporate-owned deal. Yeah.
Shut out any third-party candidate.
That's right.
Yeah. So they've got it sewed up. And if the People's Party has any pretensions, think they're going to be able to run electoral campaigns that amount to anything, no, it ain't going to happen. But what they can do, and I've seen a wee bit of this, what they can do is get people out into the streets, scare the buggers.
That's what it's going to take.
That's what it's going to take. And, when I say we've seen a wee bit of this, it was this thing that Jimmy Dore started about
force the vote, Medicare,
having a forcing of a vote on Medicare for all.
A floor vote.
They backed that. They pushed it. They worked on that. That was good. That was good. That was getting people out into the streets.
Mm-hmm.
That was, showing your pulling your knives out, showing your force, and it should draw people to them because, hey, here's a party that's doing something. Green Party's not doing anything.
No, and libs aren't either. I mean, and to your point though, this is the one thing that kind of concerns me is the monolithic treatment these groups get. For example, the fracas at the Capitol building, the January 6th thing, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't just this monolithic Trump right. There was all kinds of people there and some very scary people
Lord,
there.
yes.
Yeah. It was like, but the media just treated it like these MAGA guys. And, they focused on the crazy real estate lady in Plano, Texas, who rented a plane and, whatever.
That tells you who was there.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's largely. And then you had the Nazis and all that stuff. But then the thing that they ignored really strangely were the people that vandalized McConnell and Pelosi's homes. Mm-hmm. Writing cancel rent in graffiti is not a Trump message.
No.
And I'm in Texas. I remember last November, we had like 15,000 cars waiting in food bank lines. And for the first time in 80 years, for the first time in 80 years, food banks in this country were out of food since the Depression. So I didn't go to that food bank thing to card people and say, hey, are you Republican or Democrat? The economist Richard Wolff says that the average American is three missed meals away from getting to the street. Okay. And that's kind of where the media, which I blame them and not in a Trump way, but they're bought and they just peddle the narrative.
They're owned.
They're owned. And so they don't.
It's corporate media with a corporate message.
Right. And they do not want there to be any nuance out there. They don't want to focus on the type of people that may have vandalized Pelosi or McConnell's house, or look at the factors that probably brought a bunch of MAGA people to the Capitol based on what Trump told them to do, because they're hurting. Happy people don't vote for a demagogue, right? Happy people don't take to the streets. Right. Chris Rock has his joke on his last special. He goes, you want to get people acting right, help them out. Somebody with a 749 credit score isn't going to probably break into your house. Right. Yeah. So it's like, you got to start helping some people out. Right. And, and that's the truth. I mean, it's like, so
either you give them a psychological lift or you materially help them out.
Right.
Trump offered a psychological lift. He offered scapegoats. He offered ersatz, positive thinking about yourself,
right,
and your country. So I was kind of surprised that Biden won.
I was surprised, but I wasn't shocked.
Shocked. No.
And the numbers, I don't know if you saw the numbers, but the actual percentages with the Biden electorate was interesting. Only 36% of people actually voted for Biden that were polled. The other 64% just voted against Trump.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I mean, I could have run Pol Pot and he would have got 64% of the vote.
He would have got 64%. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because he wasn't Trump. So it's that thing that I say all the time. It's a paraphrase that I got out of Noam Chomsky, but it's like the Democrats became Republicans and the Republicans went insane.
That's essentially, they drove themselves insane with their Southern strategy. They weeded out reasonable people from the party,
right,
to the point that they had to jump to the Democrats. This is a desperation move.
Sure,
we've got to back whatever quasi corpse that the Democrats offer.
Not even a corpse, a quasi corpse.
A quasi corpse.
Well, I mean,
let me throw in a little bit of history that you probably know, but maybe your listeners don't.
Yeah.
1852, there were two parties in the United States. There were the Democrats and the Whigs.
That's right.
Right. Yeah, sure. And well, who's ever heard of the Whigs any now? They split in 1852.
Mm-hmm.
They split on the slavery issue.
That's right.
The pro-slavery Whigs became Democrats, which was the main slave party. That left a vacuum in the two-party system. It wasn't as solidly controlled as it is now on the electoral plane, but it was a two-party system nonetheless. So there were a number of third parties wandering around the landscape, and
well, one of them was the Constitutionalist Party.
Yeah, I don't remember. There were several others as well, and the Republican Party.
That's right.
Well, the Whigs migrated to the Republican Party in 1852, started winning elections,
mm-hmm.
and put Abraham Lincoln in office.
And swept the Congress, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they did. Well, actually, what happened is that a certain number of legislators refused to recognize the Electoral College vote. Sound familiar?
Yeah, it does.
They expelled them. Thank you. Goodbye. Go home.
Wow.
Yeah. The Democrats don't have the guts to throw out the Trump rumpers.
No, they don't.
Refuse the Electoral College vote. They don't have the guts to do it.
See, but then to your point, though, and we got some time left. I mean, to your point, though, and you said this earlier, that people are going to have to take to the streets.
Mm-hmm.
This country, man, we have defanged that activity the last 40, 45 years. We have just seriously killed that activity. I mean, like BLM, and it's short-lived when it is like the summer when BLM was doing their thing. I don't care what anybody says about BLM. I don't care if it's George Soros. I don't give a fuck. I mean, bottom line, a 19-year-old kid holding a sign because he doesn't want to be shot for being black. I don't think he gives a crap if Ronald McDonald is back in their cause. It's, the fact is that, we got snuff films being made every month starring police. Mm-hmm. And, I know there's a lot of good cops out there, but there's also a lot of fucking whack jobs that are out there that, the bottom line don't like people who don't look like you and me. Right. Mm-hmm. And so all that to say,
I'm not sure about you.
Well, I get away
with people who look like me.
Yeah, I get away with the freckle. I'm not attractive, but I fit the color scheme. I fit the color scheme. Unless
that's true you do. I was just thinking you're.
No. Well, actually, unless I'm at the airport, because my real name is, I got the Abdul Falafel Mustafa name. So when I go to the airport,
that's what I meant by they don't like.
I look like an Irish Jew in person, and then they see my thing. They go, you don't look like this guy. But but the other part I was going to say really quick was just that that protest was kind of short-lived. As soon as some of the cosmetic changes got made, the Redskins changed their name and, we knocked down a few statues. It seemed like, okay, that kind of just went away. And it just seems like we don't know how to, like the Europeans know how to protest. Right.
Well, yes and no. They've been tamed as well. I mean, the French have no.
The French were out of control. Yeah. The French were like a year and a half. They were out of control.
Yeah. The yellow jackets, I call them. The vest is too soft. They're yellow jackets.
They're coming to sting you.
And gilet, which is the French gilet jaune.
Okay.
Could mean yellow jacket or yellow vest. Either one in English.
Right. That's funny, man.
But anyhow, no, you're right. The population has been tamed. Populations generally are tamed. Okay, there was a big uprising around the Vietnam War, and the core of it was guys like me, who was in college then.
Right.
Were looking at their future and saying, "I'll be goddamned if I'm going to go to Vietnam."
Right.
And it was Joan Baez out telling, and I saw her in San Francisco in '65. Girls, say yes to the boys who say no to the war.
Oh my God, that is like a third-party endorsement. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's why you guys got laid. Okay, it's Joan Baez. Good times.
Yeah, Joan Baez. Yeah. I heard it with my own two ears.
Right.
And so that was a very particular segment of the population.
Sure.
that blew its stack and brought their parents along to a large extent.
Sure.
But these are college kids. This was not the American working class. The American working class was for the war.
That's right. Yeah. Well, labor, surprisingly enough, was really for the war.
Oh yeah, this is jobs,
Yeah.
Face it. And they put a veneer of patriotism and flag waving on it, but hell, they were making out like
bandits.
Jobs.
I know for a fact we lost 5,000 helicopters in Vietnam, and that's money that Bell Helicopter made.
Oh yeah.
That's just one company.
Some guys down on the shop floor made money too.
Yeah, damn right they did. And then we as we start to wrap up here.
This is a different situation.
That was my next question. So please.
Yeah, it is a different situation. It hasn't pulled itself together, but the guys down on the shop floor have been hurting for more and more over the last 4 decades.
Right.
And that's where it can get earth shaking.
Well, see, and then that's where's the next? I mean, this is rhetorical, but where's the next Fred Hampton? Where's the next guy that shows? I mean, Fred, they killed him for this, but the guy that can show up and say, "Hey, white people, black people, brown people, we're all being fucked by this class warfare. There's no left, right. It's up, down." Right.
That's what got Martin Luther King killed finally.
Oh, the last 2 years he was saying, "Oh yeah, 100%." It costs corporate America nothing to integrate a lunch counter.
No.
Right. You start talking about wage equality and you start talking about ending the war that they're making money from, you're gonna have to die.
Yeah. Having blacks at the lunch counter means more revenue.
That's right. It's like Constantine the First recognizing Christianity. He didn't have a come to Jesus moment. He just realized if you kept feeding Christians to the lions, they don't pay taxes.
Right.
So let's just go ahead and make it legal and get some churches out of it. And they started the Catholic Church out of that crap too. Who's kidding who? That was initially a state-run venture. And but that's what it boils down to. But the next Fred Hampton, like what I saw at Pelosi's house, what I saw on the Capitol steps, were two separate factions with more in common than they do not have in common. Is that accurate to assume? I can find three. Run it by again. The people that vandalized Pelosi's house, right, saying cancel rent, obviously not Trumper people, had more in common with the Capitol people than they don't have in common. I can name 4 things.
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
Do you know that there weren't Trump people too? Are they crossing over?
You mean at the Pelosi house?
Yeah,
I think it was largely a left deal. I mean, just by basically the kind, this is my assumption based on the type of vandalism that was at the house, right? And McConnell, I keep calling Mitch McConnell, McConnell, same thing. Where they're writing these real leftist messages in graffiti on their homes, but then you had the Trump guys basically protesting they didn't like the election results.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
and
at least at the Capitol.
Yeah, and so it's like
how many do you suppose in the Trump rump are on the verge of being thrown out of their rental unit?
I'd be surprised if it was under half. I don't think a lot of those people were doing well. Not everybody is the crazy real estate lady that can afford to rent a plane from Plano. I mean, a lot of these people, the same thing you just said about 10 minutes ago. That these Trump people, he was like a psychological Band-Aid. Right. Yeah. And there's no examination on the Democratic side whatsoever of how Hillary lost. I mean, the states that Trump took were states that Obama took twice. Right. They refused to look at the policies that failed. And then her campaign was, I won't go to the states where the policies failed because I'm saying America's always been great. So we don't need this make America great again shit because America's always been great, but I just won't go to the states like Indiana and Ohio, like where the shit failed that I'm saying makes us so goddamn great. And then she was saying, at the top of her lungs, Medicare for all will never come to pass. Well, I'm not a strategist, but you could pay me $500,000 for 6 months. And the first thing I would do on day one of your campaign, don't say that out loud. And that's not a bumper sticker, right? Medicare for all will never come to pass in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Yeah. And so there's no examination. There's no postmortem.
Well, yeah. Well, they're in a tough position to examine because they are a capitalist party. They are owned and operated by their donor owners.
Right.
They can't say stuff like that.
Sure.
Even in jest.
Right.
They can't say stuff like that. Their donors will just pull out and let them die.
Well, and even the bankers famously said last spring that if Bernie Sanders got the nomination, they were going to vote for Donald Trump.
They were going to go for Trump. Yeah, sure.
And this is Lloyd Blankfein. This is Bloomberg.
Yeah. This isn't Tea Party bankers.
Right. It's the
they're the stalwarts, the Democratic Party stalwart owners.
Right. And that's the thing that nobody's okay.
Biden said, right, if anybody, if they vote for Medicare for all, I'm going to veto it. He had no bones about it.
Oh, and he said, and that question was posed to him, if you had a Democratic Congress that passed Medicare for all, would you sign it? And he said no.
No.
So it's like, so what the fuck are you voting for him for? This is the thing that made me so mad this last fall, and I got into a lot of discussions in person here in Austin, Texas, chewy blue Austin. Where I was told, well, the Democrats represent my values. I'm like, what values do they represent?
What values are those?
What values are those? Because you can tell me what they say on Twitter, but I could look at their voting record and I could tell you they vote 95% with the Republicans. So what are they giving me that makes me not want to? I'll take a libertarian over a Republican or a Democrat. There's at least 4 things that the libertarians believe that I'm like, okay, if you ran things, I could go for that. Getting us out of the wars and all. They're sincere about it. It's not something to say to win elections because clearly they don't win a lot of elections either.
No.
But in the next few minutes we've got here, I mean, okay, so the People Party, you're seeing them mobilize a little bit. What do you think is it going to take in the streets? Is that what it's going to take to start getting people to wake the hell
absolutely.
up? Yeah.
Okay. Are you familiar with Peter Turchin?
No.
Peter Turchin. Get familiar with Peter Turchin. Ages of Discord. It's a tough academic, mathematical, historical book. But he says in the beginning, he can just jump the first couple of chapters. I'm a physicist. I read them. I read them. Okay. Yeah. What he says, among other, he says all societies go through periods of a consolidated elite that is running the show. They're doing the job. And then after a few generations, the elite begins to go to war with itself. There's not enough places for postulants to join the elite, so there are factions developing to put in their postulants. At the same time, the general population is becoming immiserated, and there's a third element that he throws into this. And he says, this happens in every country. He talked about the situation leading up to the French Revolution, the Civil War, and he, doing the math, says that the 20s in the United States will be a period as turbulent as the Civil War period.
Wow.
And I read that book. I said, I didn't do the math, but that's what we're seeing. And then he says that doesn't mean it's going to be a civil war. It's going to be turbulence. It could be a revolution. This is a revolutionary situation.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the great what is it they call it? The Glorious Revolution in England that brought about capitalist takeover from the feudal aristocracy.
Yeah, it was 100 years before our U.S. Revolution, actually.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so this is something that just happens. Every elite gets itself into a bad situation. Things fall apart. Entropy rules, and an elite that is happy with its situation is not going to have the spirit necessary to fight encroaching entropy. But anyhow, we're in the kind of situation where, people are going to end up going into the streets. civil war is possible. Revolution is possible. Or it could just be a really massively ugly time, and then we get back to business as usual.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, there's an economist named Mark Blythe who I like quite a little bit. He's a Scottish guy out of Brown University. And I think he's a frustrated comedian because he's got these great lines, and it sounds funnier with a Scottish accent. But one of the things he says is that what the capitalists have to realize is the Hamptons are a low-lying beach. It's not a defensible position. So when you've got the most armed populace in the known world on sea-doos and stolen speedboats, raiding your island to choke the shite out of you, he does this whole. It's almost like it's like he wrote. I've seen him so many times. Like it's almost like watching comedy. But he's not wrong. And at one point, the short-sightedness cannot protect itself from itself.
Yeah.
Somebody
should do a Google study of Google searches of the word guillotine.
Oof. I saw something like that about a week and a half ago. It was grim.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, it was like somewhere in the neighborhood. It was like some ridiculous amount of. It was like when the Brits voted for Brexit and then didn't know what Brexit was. It was like that number of searches. Right. Like it was like in the 10 million of searches. Like it was a lot of people were looking up guillotine and even as many as how to make one.
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus Christ.
There is a rising crescendo of Facebook memes with guillotines in them, or jokes about guillotines.
I've seen like 30. Oh, easy.
Yeah. And well, that's not a population that's happy.
No, it's not. And as we wrap up here, the thing that really frustrates me is this. It's like nobody's read a book or seen a movie. I'm not even religious anymore, but when, back in the day when people used to go to church and shit, you remember those Bible stories? Most of them didn't end well. You should take no one likes Pontius Pilate, right? Because he was a chick and shit. And he walked them both on the balcony and said, hey, I got the cop killer on this side, and I got the guy who raised, the guy from the dead and fed 5,000 people with a couple of fish. Who do you want me to kill? And they're going, give us Barabbas, the cop killer. Yeah. And so Pontius Pilate's like, all right, that's cool. I wash my hands. Sorry. And even his wife warned him, you're going to be sorry one day. And he's like, well, fuck it. I'm still governor. And he just went a merry way. And I don't know if the story of Jesus is true, but the human nature parts of that are true.
Oh, yes, they are.
You know what I mean? It's like that. That's the thing. People get all mad if you bring up a Bible story, like you're trying to convert them. I'm like, I don't give a shit what you believe. But if you look at those stories, they're like either a warning or an example.
They tell telling truths.
Yeah, about human nature. Like it's been 3,000 years and we still got guys running around acting like King David and Bathsheba. They get their dick into something. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They're doing drugs with a Swedish masseuse and their wife's watching them or whatever. And they lose the entire empire. And like nobody connects the dots. It's like human beings just don't change, man. We got cell phones. We have all this great shit, but we just don't seem to want to, progress and move forward. And as Bill Hicks used to say, eventually get the fuck off.
We've got a lot of bad genes.
Yeah.
Our situation is that we are wired or genetic, Darwinianly determined, selected to solve problems that hunter-gatherers had. Mm. And we've only had 10,000 years from the beginnings of the agricultural economies to now to rewire our genes. And it takes a lot longer than that.
Apparently.
It takes a lot longer.
Apparently.
There are very good hunter-gatherer reasons why women take care of the kids.
Right.
It wouldn't work otherwise.
Right.
How many men do you know who can feed a child?
Well, my brother.
We just aren't built for it.
Yeah, I know very few. Yeah.
And all these things that interfere in one way or another with trying to live in the 21st century civilization, where our notion of who to be afraid of and who not to be afraid of is is geared to living in a small clan. It can't turn its back on any clan that it runs into in a month's time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, you're right. No, I agree.
We just aren't prepared for that. We have to continuously, consciously fight so many tendencies that are just part of our hunter-gatherer heritage.
Well, what's so frustrating is it's so easy to make people tribal. It's easy.
Well, that's it.
It's easy. It's easy to make
them tribal at the drop of a hat.
Like that. I remember the first Gulf War, like, Saddam Hussein was our buddy for 8 years. He fought Iran for us. Yeah. Right. And then, he goes into Kuwait, and Bush knew what the fuck up was. He knew that April Glaspie gave him permission basically to go into Kuwait as long as he didn't fuck with Israel. That was her direct quote. And so he's like, okay. And they've been side drilling into his oil for a while he was busy fighting Iran.
All right.
And then he caught him and he said, hey, maybe knock that off. And they go, well, we got friends in the United States. He goes, well, I don't know if you noticed, I got friends in the United States too. Fuck you. And then that whole frack. And then and overnight, he becomes the Hitler of the desert. I mean, all this shit. It was just like, and you got everybody salivating, and Bush was trying to lick that Vietnam problem. And that was his motivation. It was just a bunch of twisted shit. And we were able to turn nearly an entire nation into Iraq haters who couldn't find Iraq on a map. If I tattooed Iraq on their ass, they couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Right. And you're just like overnight. And I'm sitting there going,
but you know what? Think about people's adherence to their sports team.
Same thing.
Same damn thing.
Same thing.
And it's ingrained in you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's ingrained in you to be ready to jump into tribal mode.
That's right.
You pledge the allegiance every morning at school.
You should. Yep. And they put under God in that in the 50s because of the commies were coming.
Yeah.
Right. And that wasn't always there. And that's the other thing. People act like this shit's all immutable. Right. Well, we say the Pledge of Allegiance. It's like they didn't write that in 1776, dipshit. Well, we sing the national anthem. Well, they didn't write that in 1776 either, dipshit. Yeah. The flag was the only original invention at that time, and nobody gave a fuck about a flag anyway. Even Britain, you could find a person who would be loyal to their lord or their duke before the nation.
Yeah.
That's how it was until about 150 years ago. And we got onto this nation crap,
right.
And now it's like, it just keeps going and going.
Germany was created in 1871.
Yeah.
Just in time for World War I.
Right. We need a boogeyman. We need a bad guy. And this is our pattern. I mean, it's World War I, we hate the Germans. Then we hate the Russians for 20 years. Then we hate the Germans again. Then we hate the Russians again. Got bored of the Russians. We needed some Arabs. Then the Arabs showed up, right? Yeah. And we got bored of the Arabs. Now we're back to the Russians. It's like, it just, and I know people I've been having a lot of fun with this. If you want to have fun with your liberal friends at parties, this has been a lot of fun for me, especially after they've had a couple of drinks, because they'll start going on all those fucking Russians. And I heard Jimmy Dore say this about 3 years ago, and I was going, God damn, he's making sense. It's like, would you say fucking Jew or fucking Mexican or fucking Arab? No, that would make you sound racist. So what I've been doing is when someone goes on to the fucking Russians, I'm like, well, so do you like Muslims? I caught a guy like this once. It's like, do you like, oh, I love my Muslim brothers. Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. You like Mexicans then? Yeah. Okay, well, that sword cuts both ways, man.
Yeah.
Because what you just said about the fucking Russians, I know Trumpers that say fucking Mexicans and fucking this and fucking that. So,
I like it when somebody says, oh, well, you're just an old white man. I said, what kind of ageist, racist remark is that?
Right. Right. Right.
If they called you at their identity politics.
If a guy your age, if a guy your age was Puerto Rican and he called you an old spick, they'd freak out.
Yeah.
They would lose their shit. Oh my God, he called him an old spick. That's so racist. But yeah, you're right though. Hey man, listen, we got to start wrapping this up, but
okay.
I'm going to do me a favor if you could, because you sent me the PDF of the article. If there's a link to that, I would like to put that in the body of the show. If you have a link to that.
This is the article on the breakup of
time for second party. Yeah.
Right. I'm pretty sure it's on Bruce and Barbara's site.
Okay. Yeah, I'll look it up there, and I'll put it in the body of the show. Well, folks, listen. My guest has been John Schoonover, and we've been yakking about some things, and I'm sure some of it made you uncomfortable, and that's what it's supposed to. And if it does, before I finish off my little rant here. You can always visit us at thebittertruth.info. Again, we appreciate support of the show. And as this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.